Chapter 17. I came in after work Monday evening and found Devon in the kitchen working on dinner. I kissed him. "How was your day?" "Not bad, but it's not over yet." He kissed me back. "What's up?" "Ethan called. He has some information on Annie and he wants to go over it." "All right." I waited. I knew there had to be more. I told him to bring it over and invited him to dinner. "I'm sorry I didn't let you know earlier, it just occurred to me when you came in." I shrugged. "It's not like you're expecting me to cook and serve for you." Devon chuckled. "I know better than that." "When will he be here?" He glanced at the clock. "An hour or so." "Good. I have time to shower and change." "Yep." He went back to cooking as I headed for the other room. I finished my shower and put on a bright-colored dress that fell just above my knees and went to see if Devon needed any help. Padding barefoot into the kitchen, I looked around. "What do you need?" "Nothing. I'm good." He moved around the kitchen, working easily. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure. You can sit down and talk to me though. You look a little tired." I took a seat in one of the chairs at the table and watched him move around the small kitchen. I am, though the shower helped a lot. I don't understand how I can be so tired after doing so little. "It couldn't possibly be because you're growing a person inside you, could it?" Sarcasm was heavy in his voice. I rolled my eyes. "All I do all day is sit at a desk. Today I only did about half of what I normally do." "How are things going?" I knew he was asking about training my replacement. "As well as can be expected, I guess." I paused. "She's slow and she has to think about everything and it gets on my nerves, but I'm sure she'll do fine after some practice. I've been doing the job long enough that most of it comes naturally. She'll get there eventually." I was talking about the new girl who would take over my job. I got up and moved around Devon to fix myself a glass of iced tea. "How was your day?" "Not bad. I stacked hay most of the morning and then fixed a couple of fences, nothing earth-shattering, but all things that needed to get done. After Ethan called, I quit for the day and came in to clean up. The important stuff was done. I was just doing busy work anyway, nothing that couldn't wait a day or a week." I leaned against the wall and took a deep drink. I hadn't realized how thirsty I was until I started drinking. "Any idea what Ethan has?" I asked once I drained the glass. "He didn't mention anything specific, but it's probably the stuff I asked for. Who she's been dating, spending time with, that kind of thing. All the basic stuff the cops will look at and the pack has ignored." I nodded. With the food ready to cook on its own for a little bit, Devon washed and dried his hands, then moved in front of me. I was still leaning against the wall, trying to stay out of his way, until he pulled me into his arms. "I missed you today." His lips moved against mine before drawing me into a deep kiss. I set my glass on the nearby counter and kissed him back, pouring all my longing into it. "I missed you too." I broke the kiss. I stood with his arms surrounding me, feeling comfortable and secure. I laid my head against his chest and wrapped my arms around his waist, not pulling him closer, just holding him. We stood that way until a knock sounded on the apartment door, and Devon broke away to answer it. I heard the door open, and Ethan's voice as Devon invited him inside. I picked up my tea glass, refilled it, and joined them in the living room. We sat in the front room, talking and getting to know each other a bit better until dinner was ready, saving the possibly gruesome details until after we'd eaten. After dinner, I cleared the table and loaded the dishwasher while Ethan pulled a stack of files out of the bag he'd brought and laid them on the table. Once I had everything cleaned up, I moved to the table to see what they'd found, figuring 3 sets of eyes would be better than 2. I figured I might as well get used to it anyway. From what I understood, a Pax Theron was about the same as a chief of police, and Devon would now be in charge of handling investigations for the Aniquitos. First things first, do we have a copy of the autopsy report? Devon asked. No, Ethan shook his head. We don't have anyone with access to get us a copy. I may. Devon glanced up at me and I knew he was thinking about Rain. I'll see if I can get a copy. Let's skip that for now. Was she seeing anyone? Yeah. Ethan flipped through several stacks of papers, looking for something. He pulled a single page out and read it. Some guy named Tanner Meza. Do you know him? Devon looked at the other man. Ethan shook his head. He's human and half my age. I may have seen him around town a few times, but I don't know him. I wouldn't even recognize him if I saw him. Could he have found out about us and taken it out on her? Does he have an alibi? Devon wanted to know. If he's behind it, he had someone else do it. There's surveillance footage of him all night. He was at work. Devon nodded absently as though thinking, not agreeing. What do we know about him? Grew up around here. Public records show no trouble, but again, we don't have anyone in the police department to run his name and pick up anything not on record. Ethan pointed out. From what I found, he's involved with his family and church. I couldn't find even gossip of anything negative about him. His associates? I didn't think to go that far. Ethan admitted. We'll probably need it. What else do we have? Devon asked. She had 3 ex-boyfriends. She was what? 25, 26? Only 3 exes? Devon sounded surprised. Ethan shuffled papers. She'd been seeing this Meza for a couple of months. Before that she was with, he checked the paper again, Willie Anderson. Him, I know. He's Pac. A pain in the ass, but he's never been in any real trouble. Who are the others? Christian Bailey and Noah Scott. What do you know about them? I know Bailey's family, but not him personally. Not familiar with Scott, he's not in the area anymore. How were the breakups? Not bad enough for anyone to remember anything about it. I remember Noah, I put in, speaking for the first time since they'd pulled out the files. They dated most of the way through high school, then his dad got transferred and they moved away. Nevada, I think. Anyway, they only broke up because he moved so far away. So, as far as we know, none of these guys have a reason to want her dead? Not as far as we know. Devon looked at me. Where's the note that was slipped under the door? I gave it to Bill. I had no reason to keep it. Looking back to Ethan, Devon said, it's a printout of the news article about Annie's murder with something written across it in red ink. Do you have it? Ethan nodded and opened a different folder. He pulled out the paper in question and handed it to Devon. Did you find anything on this? No. Wasn't anything to find. Should have been you, Devon read, looking back and forth from me to Ethan for a minute. This implies that Annie and Nicki have something in common. The question is, was it planned that way and the note left by the killers, or did whoever left the note just use the murder to their benefit? There's no way to know. Ethan said. No, there isn't, but we can consider both possibilities. Investigate both possibilities. All right. We need to figure out what Annie and Nicki have in common. If Annie was supposed to be a warning or substitute for Nicki, we'll find a link between the two of them, something more than having gone to school together. If that is the only tie between them, it could have been one of several hundred women. I think Annie was chosen as the victim with as much deliberation and planning as where they dumped the body. Devon looked at me. Can you think of anything similar between the two of you? I thought for a moment. No. I haven't really talked to her in years. I mean, I'd say hi if I ran into her in town, but that's it. Ethan picked up a photo of Annie. She was standing in front of a house, smiling at the camera. It looked recent, sometime in the last year or two. He looked at the picture, then me, back and forth for a minute. I don't see any physical resemblance. Devon looked at the photo a moment. No, there's not, that can't be it. It has to be something else, something about their lives maybe. Was Annie being harassed at all? Had she gotten any threatening notes? Anything? No, not that I know of. She should have brought anything like that to me. Any chance she thought it was humans and took it to the police? Ethan shrugged. Hell. It's possible. What else do we know about her life? There's not much more to know. She grew up here, went away to school, then came back and worked. She was a waitress at a diner in town. Any trouble at work? None. No complaints, no angry customers, nothing I can find. What about her friends? Who does she spend time with? No clue. Ethan shrugged. We need that. We need all known associates, not just her. Meza, Anderson, Bailey, and Scott as well. I'll look into it, ask around, and gather everything I can. Ethan started gathering papers up and putting them back in their folders. Good. Devon's eyes scanned the folders on the table, and I knew he was thinking about what was inside them. Leave this stuff with me. I'll keep going over it. I'll get with my contact in the police department and see what I can find out too. Ethan stacked the folders on the table. Anything else? Not offhand. All right. I'll get started trying to find out what you need to know. Good. If I find anything that might help or think of anything else I need, I'll be in touch, Devon said. We said our goodbyes, and Devon walked Ethan to the door before coming back to stand behind me. What do you make of it? I stared sightlessly at the table, thinking about it. I don't know. There's something there, I'm not seeing it, but I know it's there. I'm going to call Rain and see if he'd be willing to share information. I turned and looked at him. It isn't Rain's case. I know. He said he's not on it officially, but that pretty much everyone's working on it. I nodded, remembering. I'll call and ask him to come over. We don't have to do this tonight if you're too tired. He gently kissed my neck. Yeah, we do. We need to find who did this. I pulled away and went to get my PCD out of my purse and call my brother. Less than an hour later, Rain knocked on the door. What's this about you having information on the Beigler murder? He asked as soon as the door closed behind him. Come into the kitchen and sit down, we'll share what we know. I took the lead since he was my brother. Seated around the table, the folders still stacked to one side, I started. We've already told you that the enforcer that went to Texas with us tried to kidnap me. Dev was angry about it, even after we got home and he went to the Theron. Theron? Rain asked. Head enforcer. Think of it kinda like the chief of police. He makes sure people follow the rules, assigns enforcers to administer punishments ordered by the Aniquitos, that kind of thing. Devon said. Okay, Rain said. I continued, anyway, Devon went to the Theron to let him know how unhappy he was with the enforcer. His manner of communication was a little more physical than I would have preferred. I shot Devon an unhappy look. They fought. Devon won. Devon didn't plan it, and we didn't even know until later when Bill called, but it meant Devon is the new Theron. So, without intending to, Devon had to take over as the head of the pack police force. Rain summed it up well. That's what you were telling us yesterday. I nodded, yeah, pretty much. So, what does this have to do with the Beigler murder? You know that Annette Beigler was one of us, Devon said bluntly. Yeah, I told you, Nicki. My brother turned to look at me. I remembered. Yeah. Well, because she's one of us, we're looking into it too. Now, you said you weren't on the case, Devon said. I'm still not. But you have access to it, right? Would anyone question you looking at things? I asked. He shrugged. No one would think anything of it. The whole force is working on it, unofficially. Since I'm now in charge of the investigation for the pack, I thought I'd see if you might be willing to share information. Devon offered. You mean tell you what we have? Rain's voice was suspicious. Devon pulled a piece of paper out of one of the folders and slid it across the table to Rain. It was the printout of the news article I'd found under the door. I mean share information. He repeated. Rain looked at it a moment. Where'd this come from? It was under the door when I got home the Monday after she was found, I said. The day I talked to you about it. Shit. Rain cursed under his breath. He sighed. He pinched the bridge of his nose with one hand. What do you need? He asked without looking up. We don't have anyone else inside the police department who can get us information, and there are some things we can't be open about with the department. Rain sighed but seemed to understand. But I'm willing to work with you. You, not the department, to find whoever did this, to keep Nicki safe. Devon looked at the article on the table between them. If we determine it was humans, I'll agree that everything we have will be turned over to the cops, and they can go through the system. However, if it's one of us, you need to let us handle it. Rain looked down at the article for several minutes, obviously thinking about the proposition and not liking it. What do you need? His voice low, almost reluctant. First, a copy of the autopsy report would be great. There might be something there, an injury, a clue, that would mean something to us but nothing to you. Okay. Second, do you know if she'd had any kind of trouble, harassment, threatening notes, anything? Devon continued. Not that I'm aware of, but it could be that I haven't run across it yet. I'll check. I also have some names here, her current and past boyfriends. He shuffled through the folders, looking for the page with the names. If you have them, I could use anything in the way of criminal history, known associates, community ties. Because of this, he tapped on the article that had been under my door. We think we may find some tie between Annie and Nicki. We're not sure, but it's an angle to look at, one we can't ignore. We'll have her known associates and criminal histories on them and her boyfriend. I don't know if they've looked into previous boyfriends, but they should have, it's SOP. I'll get you copies of as much as I can lay my hands on. Known associates is less urgent, though they'll still be helpful. Ethan, the man I won the position from, is my second in command among the enforcers. He's helping me out and he's got a lot of resources, but he assumed the cops would look at all this and that he didn't need to. Devon took a deep breath, glancing at the papers once again scattered over the tabletop. I see it differently. We have to cover all the bases and as long as you're willing, work together. Not just on this, but on any problem we encounter. He looked up at Rain. Rain met his look and after a moment nodded. I can handle working together. We went through everything that Ethan had brought, even the things he hadn't shown us, and shared what we had with Rain. We told him the conclusions we'd drawn and the lack of them before he went home. He promised to let us know if he came up with anything, and to bring by the information Devon had asked for, as soon as he could. That Saturday, Devon arranged with Dad to take the weekend off so we could work on packing. We had 2 apartments to move. We spent most of the day working on my apartment so we could get my brothers to come help us move. Devon's apartment wouldn't be bad, but hauling all my stuff down 3 floors of stairs wasn't going to be fun. I was taping off the last box of dishes when I heard a PCD ring. It wasn't my ringtone, so I didn't bother hunting for a PCD. Instead, I carried the box into the living room and added it to the growing pile along one wall before heading back to the kitchen. Devon stopped me before I made it out of the room. He had been going through each room one by one and taking things off the walls and packing them so nothing would break. That was Ethan. He said, "He's on his way over. There's word about Brandon." I froze. They know where he is? No, but they know where he was. Ethan said he'll tell us everything when he gets here. He glanced around the room. You want to take a break or work until he gets here? Might as well work, it will keep me from freaking out about it until then. All right, but stop picking up heavy boxes. Leave them where you pack them and I'll move them. I don't want you to hurt yourself or the baby. I didn't argue. I knew it wouldn't do any good. Instead, I went back to work. I was packing the canned goods. I hadn't planned to move those boxes anyway. I had emptied most of the cabinets and had the kitchen almost completely packed by the time Ethan knocked on the door. Devon had already let him in by the time I made it into the front room, but he was still holding the door open. I lifted one brow in question, but before he answered, a delivery girl appeared in the doorway. Devon signed the slip, took the pizzas from her arm, and thanked her before closing the door. Hey Ethan, I greeted the man before turning to Devon. I didn't realize you'd ordered food. I must have been lost in thought not to hear him. I was hungry and I knew you would be too. We might as well eat while we're stopped. I took a seat on the sofa that we'd purposely moved to one side of the living room, along with the chairs, putting them out of the way but still usable while leaving space to stack boxes. Why don't you join us, Ethan? Devon said, moving toward the couch where I sat. He put the pizza boxes on the table and went into the kitchen. Ethan sat in the recliner on the other side of the coffee table on which Devon had put the boxes of pizza. Devon got a roll of paper towels from the kitchen and joined me on the couch. There's a meat lovers and a spinach and mushroom, have whatever you want. He put a slice of the spinach and mushroom on a towel and handed it to me before helping himself to the meat lovers. At first, we ate in silence, but as Devon pulled out a second slice for himself, he spoke. You said you had word on Brandon? Ethan nodded and swallowed. Yeah. I got the call this morning. The enforcer we have trailing him traced him to Sweetwater, Texas. My head snapped up at the name of the town, my heart racing in my chest. Sweetwater? You know that's where we just came back from, right? Ethan frowned. You were in Roscoe. Roscoe is tiny, smaller than Pima, there was nowhere to stay, and our hotel was in Sweetwater. The two towns are like Thatcher and Pima, except there's an interstate connecting them instead of a highway. The crease on Ethan's forehead deepened. That's not good. He wiped his hands and face, then put his wadded paper towel on the coffee table before leaning back and speaking again. West called this morning. West? Devon asked, unfamiliar with the name. Weston Bauer, one of our enforcers. He's been looking for Stone for a while now, that's why he wasn't at the meeting. Anyway, West called, said he'd trailed Stone to Sweetwater, but he's gone now. He'd been there about 10 days ago, but only for a day or so. Devon did the math in his head. So he was in Sweetwater while we were. It looks like it. Ethan agreed. That can't be a coincidence. I looked back and forth between the two of them. Ethan shook his head. Likely not. Troy had to have told him, let him know we were there. Devon looked at Ethan. I can't think of any other explanation. Ethan looked unhappy. The real question now is, was Troy the only one? Was he the only person in the pack leaking information to Stone? We'll have to find out, I assume, since he was an enforcer, he'd never been in trouble with the police. Devon looked at Ethan for confirmation. In our pack, that's a safe assumption. I've never allowed anyone who'd had trouble they couldn't explain to me, on the team. We have a couple who've been arrested during the course of an assignment, but there's nothing major. Things like an assault charge from when they were defending someone. Generally the charges were dropped though. Other packs aren't so picky. Some of them don't care about an enforcer's past, they only care about the now. Devon shook his head, dismissing the information about other packs. He was worried about ours right now. Anyway. No police record, he reminded us of where he'd been going, getting us back on track. We need to look at known associates. For Troy, for Brandon. Compare the two lists and see if they have any in common and how many. We may have found the key that will help us clear out this damned supremacist shifter group. Ethan looked down. I really dropped the ball on this. His voice was filled with regret. I'm good at the scheduling, the day-to-day management of the team, but we've never had any need for this kind of investigation. I didn't know where to start. He was saying what I'd been thinking, but hadn't wanted to say aloud. We'll work together now. Use both of our strengths to the advantage of the pack. Devon was diplomatic, proving he was the right person for the job, at least in my eyes. He would use all the resources he had. He looked up, meeting Ethan's eyes. If we work together, we can catch them and whoever killed Annie. I suspect it may be the same group. But that's just suspicion. We'll need proof of some kind. Our advantage is that we don't need to convince a jury, just me, you, and the Aniquitos. I can gather a list of names and we can compare them, that's no problem, but then what? That will depend on what we find. Let's get the names first and then go from there. All right. Ethan agreed. How long has this Weston guy been on Brandon's trail? Weston Bauer. I sent him out after Nicki was attacked in Seattle. He's followed Stone's trail from California all over the country. He started out a few weeks behind, now he's only about a week, he's making progress, but he's still playing catch-up. Devon thought for a moment, then took a deep breath, as if bracing for something that could be unpleasant. I want you to check out Bauer's associates too, just to be safe. We found one inside man already. Let's make sure we don't have another. Do you want me to do it for the whole team? Ethan didn't seem to care that Devon wanted to check on his team. Not yet. We can handle the ones still here later if we need to. Let's focus on the ones we can't keep an eye on for now. I think between Brandon, Annie, Behrman, Bauer, and Annie's exes, we've got enough to concentrate on for now. Ethan looked back and forth between us for a minute. He seemed to be looking for something. He glanced away, taking in the stacks of boxes for what seemed like the first time, though I knew he had to have noticed them before. When you moving? My brothers will come help us haul everything out next weekend. I just have to get everything ready by then. I'm not sure I'll make it, I said. You're not going to be carrying things, are you? Ethan asked. Not if Devon or my brothers have their way. Good. You shouldn't be lifting. I smiled, not sure what to say. I didn't believe that carrying things would hurt the baby or me, but I knew he must or he wouldn't have told me not to. I also knew that arguing with him wouldn't convince him otherwise, so I stayed quiet. We chatted as we finished eating, and after Ethan left, Devon and I went back to getting things boxed up and ready to move.